most disabilities are not something you're born with. They are something you acquire over your lifetime, which means if you live longer, there's a bigger chance to acquire a disability at some point in your life. Thank you. Before we start, I will reproduce some of the ableism that I faced. And if this might bring up hurtful memories for you, feel free to put on headphones or just, tune out mentally or leave at any time. You're still welcome to talk to me afterwards. Reach out to me when I'm walking by on this conference, or write an email to hello@rodehorstcommunications.com. And if you're watching a recording, you could also consider either skipping the slides or the sections in which I'll do this, or watch it with a trusted person. How do you know when I will talk about this? There's a big pink X in the top right corner. And before we dive in, for those of you who can't see me, I'm white, I'm in my late 20s. I have long henna red hair. I wear a gold-rimmed octagonal glasses, black shirt and shorts, and there is a teeny tiny Pride Process flag pinned to my lanyard. Also, I'm aware that this talk does not have sign interpretation, so if you don't want to rely on maybe a little bit funky auto-generated subtitles if you're watching this, I do have a transcript available. Just email me at nobarriers@rodehorst-communications.com and I will send it to you. Okay, so I love to check my assumptions, which I think is a really good thing to do, so I need your help with this. And I'm sorry, it's a little bit of a morning workout, but I promise it is a really light one. Please raise your hands if you're able to, or ask your neighbor to do it. Thank you. Okay, so put your hands down if you are not an activist or work in the movement or anything associated with it. Could be a vegan cheese factory or whatever. Okay, that is a lot of hands up, makes me happy. Hands down if there is no disabled and or chronically ill person in your group or team that you're aware of. Okay, cool. Hands down if it's less than 50%, sorry, not 50, but 15% of your group who are chronically ill or disabled. You can absolutely guesstimate this. Okay, a lot less hands. Now please take your hands down if the work you're doing in this group is unpaid. Okay, I see 2.5 hands. This is roughly what I expected. Thank you very much. Why I asked those numbers and those questions will become clear later. Okay, so I want to tell you about my personal backstory and how I fell in and sadly a little bit out of love with this movement. When I was 7 years old, I learned how sausages are made. And I wanted to be a vegetarian afterwards. My family said no, and it took them around a decade to accept that I would not eat meat. And after I became vegetarian, it took me like 2 years to go vegan. And then in 2016, I decided, okay, I don't want to be only vegan as me, the private person. I want to actively fight for the animals, so I started donating and volunteering. The idea of talking to strangers about veganism was so scary in the beginning, but when I finally did it, I learned I really enjoy it, and I'm good at it. So I started to question my career path. Do I really want to be a science journalist? Maybe I could use my skills for the movement and to help ending cruelty against animals. So I looked at the communications and the outreach our movement does and realized my skills are needed here. The only problem is that this movement does not want me or people like me, at least not really. Because there's this one moment where the perception of people, what they think about me, radically changes. And I hoped that in this movement, who sets out to improve the world, my skills would matter, that what I want to achieve would matter, that what I can bring to the tables would matter. But in every job interview I ever had, there was this moment when all my qualifications just became invisible. My CV had been called very impressive 2 minutes before and suddenly was not good enough anymore. My good grades didn't matter. The fact that I never got negative feedback for my work, that one of my bosses called me the best intern they ever had, all that just vanishes. Because for the people interviewing me, I'm no longer Lia, the person, the activist, the journalist. I become a risk, a potential liability, a complication, someone who would ask them to change how their systems are running. My disability becomes the only thing people see about me. And it always was a deal breaker. I don't know why I thought this would not happen. I've had a lot of experiences like this before, outside of this movement. And I thought, as a movement who wants to change the world for the better, I thought this would be an inclusive environment, and realized it's not. Which is very well in line with how our society in general functions, and what I learned was, or is, normal while I was growing up. When I grew up, society taught me that who and what I am is shameful and should be hid away. Disabled and gay were both used as slurs in my school, for example. In my first language, German, disabled is still used as a synonym for something bad or annoying or really shitty quite regularly. And I was taught that the only thing that really matters is my employment, my job, and my productivity. It is more important than my physical and my mental health. And this had serious consequences for me growing up. I ignored my body's limits and tried to push right over them, and let's say it did not go great. I hid away who I was, and this also meant that I robbed myself of getting in touch with the communities I belong to, of meeting people who share my struggles and could have helped me through the dark times. There's a reason disabled is often capitalized. It comes with the community. And because I know a lot of people don't know this, we do have a Pride Month, and this is our Pride flag. I absolutely acknowledge that globally I am in a super privileged position. Gay sexual actions have been legal basically as long as I'm alive. We do have same-sex marriage for 5 years, around 5 years. Our healthcare systems is one of the most accessible in the world, and pretty good actually, which means that disability does not mean you will spend your life in extreme poverty or could mean your death. Still, very often when I go interview at a place or when people realize I'm disabled, I'm the first disabled person they've ever talked to, especially in like a professional context. I would be their first disabled employee, and I would be part-time for all the time I worked there due to my condition. And normally, orgs don't have that. They do have a lot of people who maybe go part-time if they have a baby, but then come back after half a year, and people don't know how to react to this accommodation need. Also, basically all entry positions are full-time only, especially in journalism, but I've also seen this here, and they are incredibly underpaid, which makes it hard if you chop off an additional part of that salary and adjusting it to part-time. And as I said, most people don't know how to react to me and to the fact that I'm disabled, which is, as I said, no surprise, because I did not learn anything real about disabilities or chronic illnesses while I grew up. And so, of course, did the recruiters. We're all learning, and it is a learning journey. And it can take some serious work, but I promise you it is worth it. And we will cover some real basics today that will help you to make the environments you're in more inclusive and give you an idea of what questions to ask. Let's start with the definition, so you know what kind of idea I have in mind when I talk about disabilities. And this talk uses the definition by the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Persons with disabilities include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments, and this is the important part, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. So it's not about the person themselves alone, but also about the barriers we as society raise. And why should you spend some of your valuable conference time learning about this? The honest answer is, it is just really important. We are many, many people. We are the world's biggest minority. According to the World Health Organization, around 15% of the world's total population are disabled, so that's around 1 billion people. Please notice that there actually might be a lot more people who are not diagnosed or who don't count as officially disabled, because like me, they are not disabled enough for the system. Also, it is a very fast-growing minority because, well, we all know about long COVID, right? And also other chronic conditions are on the rise. And in general, people are getting older and older. And most disabilities are not something you're born with. They are something you acquire over your lifetime, which means if you live longer, there's a bigger chance to acquire a disability at some point in your life. And this means even if you don't know anyone who is disabled right now, there's a solid chance that that will change. And that someone you love or work with who is not disabled today will be disabled in the future. And learning about this now gives you the chance to show up as an ally and support them when that situation actually happens. And one good starting point is to confront your ableism, because as I said, we all have been taught patterns and behaviors that are hurtful. So let's start with a very basic question for anyone who does not know what ableism means. What actually is this? There are a lot of definitions, but I will go with this one today. And that means that ableism refers to a practice of discrimination against people who are considered to have physical and or mental disabilities or limitations. On a societal level, social exclusionary tendencies and prejudices are underpinned and consolidated through institutionalized forms. Or a little bit shorter, condensed and a little bit easier, this means it doesn't have to be about a disability or limitation you actually have, but it is about people's perception of you, what they believe about you. And it is a very, very deeply ingrained structural problem. One situation where you can see this is, ask yourself, what does a disabled person look like? What image do you have in mind? And if you want to see an even more extreme example of this, ask Midjourney to generate you an image of an autistic person. There has been a viral video on TikTok about this, maybe you've seen it. Someone asked Midjourney to create this, and regenerated and regenerated and regenerated the images. And in over 100 images, if I remember correctly, there were 2 women and 1 person of color. Everyone else was a young, white male who also looked very sad. So, what did you see when I asked you to think about a person who's disabled? Probably a lot of people will think about wheelchairs or other mobility aids. They maybe would think of a blind person with a white cane, probably of old people, and a lot probably of loneliness, of tragedies that change lives, of sadness and of suffering. But the answer is we are just as diverse as everyone else. Surprise! We are individuals, and we experience life with all the emotions, which does include a lot of joy. So shout out at this moment to the person who wears Autism Pride merch at this conference. I see you, and I'm happy to see you joyful. So what can you actually do to be a better ally? The first thing is question the terminology you grew up with. We all learned words as normal that actually are pretty hateful. This is true for racism as well as it is for ableism. Please learn the correct words to use when you're talking about someone who's disabled. Also respect people's boundaries and their privacies. No one owes you their medical history. And please accept a no. This is also true when you're offering to help someone. Like, hey, do you want me to push your wheelchair? If the person says no, then please accept the no and don't start discussing. Also, disabilities are not bad or evil. They just are. Which means that you don't need to use euphemisms. You can say disabled. It is not a bad word. We also are not broken, and you don't need to fix us. It is absolutely cool of you to give us assistance if we ask for it. But please don't offer unsolicited advice, especially if you are not a professional in this field and don't have experience with this situation. Honestly, I don't want to ever hear again, have you tried yoga? Yes, I did. Didn't fix me. Well, because I'm not broken, but anyways. Also, please respect our needs and our experiences. They may be different from you. Still, they're not special. They just are. And please be aware that a headache is not the same as a migraine. It is not the same as chronic pain. If you're having a bad day, this does not mean you know how depression feels like. It is important to accept that our experience may be different and to listen to us when we share them. It is also really important to don't do what the recruiters did to me and reduce us to our limitations. We are way more than that. We are still whole humans with interests, with dreams, with hobbies, with funny anecdotes to tell. Ask about those. We're cool if you get to know us, or at least most people are. And please don't use harmful stereotypes. See the mid-journey autistic person example. Or to break it down in short, see and treat us as equals, please. Okay, so this is about the animal rights movements, and these are some of the problems that I see in it. Overall, we create unnecessary barriers. Imagine behind the door in this image, there is vegan, right? It could be really easy and fun to get there. There maybe could be an escalator or people who help you along the way. But a lot of us instead build fire pitches and be like the creepy figure with the flaming sword and act as gatekeepers. And this is not what we should be doing. We should be inviting people in. And we will look at a few examples of how we are actually gatekeeping. One of this is working culture. Surprise. I'm a research communicator who started out as a science journalist, and I left journalism because of the working culture. And I brought a really fun comparison between journalism and the animal rights movement, and we do have a lot in common, and I think we do have to do better. One thing that unites us is that we are in this because we want to make the world a better place. This is not necessarily about us, we fight for others. And the problem is that we lack diversity, especially in positions of power, and like real representation is a vague dream. But also that we have a lot of structures in place that actually invite people to self-exploit, to go beyond their boundaries. If you work long hours because everybody does it, everybody does work unpaid overtime because we could not afford to pay all the work that's done in the movement, then this leads to an environment that includes a lot of people, because even a 40-hour work week does not work for everyone. Now make that a 70-hour work week, and you exclude even more people. There are multiple reasons why people maybe can't or don't want to do this. There's disabilities, there's chronic illness, there's taking care of others. Maybe you want to get more educated, that also takes time. Maybe you are so badly paid that you need a second job to actually be able to afford what you're currently doing. Or maybe people have hobbies and enjoy their free time, which is absolutely legit. The thing is, especially the first four apply to people of marginalized groups, and this creates additional barriers for them. Okay, so as I said, grindset is a German combination word of the grind and mindset, for everyone who is a little bit confused by that. We all probably have this guy in our head, the hooded figure with the flaming sword, who's telling us that what we're doing is not enough and that we should do more. And this prevents self-care. It leads to burnout, and that actually is incredibly costly and not sustainable, because we have to retrain people. And also we as a movement lose activists, we lose people who work for us. And if we want to grow as a movement, it's not a good idea to burn everyone out. So please, 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 if you are not directly affected by this, please question this mindset. Renegotiate your contracts, make it easier for those of us who need different work environments. If you normalize it, it's easier for us to get in, and it is also healthy for you. Okay, so if you are hiring people, if you are in charge of an HR department, if you are running an org, please adapt the policies for the needs of your team. You don't need to do everything for everyone, but please ask what people need, and especially if you hire new people, if you say you will offer accommodations, then do it. And don't be like, oh, you actually need accommodations? That is a deal breaker, we're sorry. But be there, show up for your team, it pays in the long run. Okay, so another big thing, another area we can do better in is our outreach. Because our communication is often ableist. Both in the way that we tell people with chronic illnesses or disabilities that veganism is like a magical cure, right? Just go vegan and your diabetes will go away or will not be as badly. Or I was told, just go vegan, all your energy will come back. It didn't. And also we often use illnesses and disabilities as a scare tactic. So continue to eat meat at this point, at this amount, and you for sure will have cancer and be disabled, or you'll have a stroke and spend your life in a wheelchair. Don't do that. It is really, really hurtful. And also we need to acknowledge that switching costs are real. So that's the mental or maybe monetary costs you have to invest to change your behavior, and that this can be very, very different for people. So the question is, can we really communicate to everyone, sure, you can go vegan, everybody can go vegan? The answer is, it depends on your definition of vegan. I really like this one. It's a classic from the Vegan Society, and we will focus on this part today, which means that veganism is a philosophy and a way of living which seeks to exclude all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals as far as it's possible and practicable. And that can look really, really different from person to person. And veganism has a lot of barriers in itself. We don't need to add new ones. For example, there might not be a vegan version of medication or AIDS, and you cannot judge people for that. You cannot tell them, you're not vegan, your medication isn't vegan. If you're depending on that medication, there isn't an alternative. What should you do? If you communicate to these people that they are not really vegans, you're just telling them they already lost and it's not worth putting in the effort. Plus, it's super ableist, so maybe don't. Also, if you rely on hospital treatments, there are still a lot of hospitals where no vegan food is available and not everybody can cater themselves. Also, if you're autistic, for example, textures or smell of food can be a problem, and maybe the alternative that will work for you has not been invented yet. That is not true for every autistic person, as you know, everybody's different, but this can also be a barrier. And asking people to fully go vegan could also be a risk of a relapse for an eating disorder survivor, which might lead to their death, and that it's not worth it. For someone for whom food is a difficult topic, I would consider this person vegan if they say, hey, sorry, I cannot touch anything related to food by now, that is too risky for me, but is there anything else I can do? And then maybe they don't buy leather boots, but they buy a vegan alternative. They put in effort, they go as far as they can and in their own tempo, and that is still vegan. Also, there's the way that you cannot put in the switching costs it needs, for example, because a mental illness takes up all your mental capacity, or you simply have no energy to do this because of fatigue, for example. And there are activists out there, especially on social media, who act as really violent gatekeepers in situations like these, who come in and say, oh, you're not really a vegan. And that hurts. And also, if you decide to yield a flaming sword, maybe ask yourself, is this the way to go? Because the only thing you're doing is pushing people away. And we need disabled people in this movement because, well, we need everyone. And also, disabled people bring their own perspective and have ideas for outreach, right? As every group, we know what our group needs better than people who are not in our group. Group, by the way, and this is a very loose term because, of course, we're all really different. And also, a lot of the situations mentioned above will fix themselves when veganism becomes the norm, right? If every medication automatically is vegan, then the one that is not available in a vegan version right now will be too. It absolutely does not make sense to gatekeep. You should offer support. So instead of the gatekeeping, allow gradual adaptation. Make sure that the struggles are visible and that, going vegan is so easy is not the one message you put out there. You can also use the platforms you have to uplift underrepresented creators. This shows you care, which is great, and it also allows you to create resources that people can turn to that are maybe contain answers to their struggles that your current outreach material doesn't have. And also, I will only really talk briefly about this because one, we're running out of time, and two, well, I'm a white Christian, or at least Christian raised, so I'm not an expert on this. But there are large groups that we are currently not really targeting in our outreach. I'm speaking from a German perspective here, but we only really target people of what is considered mainstream culture. I want to see newsletters that say, hey, do you know it's Ramadan? Here are 5 cool vegan recipes that you can bake or that maybe you can share with your neighbors if they're celebrating and you're not. We're a diverse population, and this needs to show up in our outreach. And the good news is that is easy to fix, right? Because vegans in these groups already exist. Hire them. Always a great idea. Amplify existing voices. Let them take over your accounts, start cooperations, and also please pay them for their work. And don't tokenize. Tokenize. So maybe let them talk about more than one topic and show up regularly. You can also import content if you're talking to post-migrational communities from activists or orgs in other countries, maybe license the best clicking contents. There's a lot of things you can do, but maybe stop focusing on white Christian raised people. Because diversity is an asset. And it actually is one of our biggest assets because it makes us strong. It allows us to get in multiple perspectives and ideas. It makes our movement more sustainable. And it is basically the only chance we have to make veganism really accessible for everyone. And this includes panels. I'll skip over this somewhat quickly, but this is a screenshot of all speakers at a German vegan conference 2 years ago. What do you see? And what don't you see? I guess the answer is somewhat obvious. So please, if you are organizing conferences, aim for representation. This is not a great idea. Maybe set yourself a quota and try to overfulfill it. And also put in the work to research experts who you want to see. And probably you will have to reach out to them and ask them to participate because applying somewhere can be scary. And if you want people, and I don't know, if there's no one who looks like me, then it is a lot harder to apply there. So please ask them, build databases, grow them, and then make sure that your event is actually accessible. Okay, so the really great thing is that everyone in this room can contribute to change, no matter what your role or background is. And your options as an individual is, first of all, believe in yourself. I know this can be scary and a lot if you never thought about this before, but it's worth getting into it. And one great step is to diversify your narrative and to educate yourself. This can happen in whatever way you prefer learning. For me, learning about disability started when I really got active on social media and realized that there was no one like me in my feeds, and that changed. And it is a relatively easy way to learn about this, but of course there's podcasts, there's books, there's YouTube videos, there's research papers, whatever your favorite way is. Normalize the fact that you will make mistakes and that you are still learning, and use the privilege you have to open up paths for others, right? This can, for example, mean that you remind people to use subtitles and write alt texts. I see confused looks in the audience. That is, if you post a picture on social media, that is not accessible for people who use screen readers. An alt text will tell the screen reader what to tell the person. It's basically an image description. And it means that even for people who can't see or have impaired vision, that they can participate in your social media and know what's going on. And subtitles, of course, are important for everyone who's hearing impaired or deaf. You can also call out bad payments and working conditions because, again, this will make, for people like me, the situation easier. If you can live off your salary, then maybe I can live off 75% of it. If you already can't do it, then there's no chance that I will. So negotiate for more vacation days, higher salaries, accommodation of any type. This helps you, and it also helps me. Also, please continue to amplify voices. You don't need to speak for us. There are a lot of us who are sharing our truths and our learnings, amplify our voices. And as mentioned earlier, if you see panels like the one I just showed you, please message the organizers. I did, nothing changed, but they were really embarrassed. So I hope if they will do another conference, it will look a bit better. Ask for recommendation. And also, if you know people in your network who would be great for the conference, recommend them. recommend them to the organizers, because a lot of them are lost and have no idea who they should ask or who they can ask or who is available. So if you can come in and say, hey, I have this great friend, or I know someone from my network, there's a solid chance that they will end up on the panel. And also try to recognize that discrimination and marginalization often go hand in hand, and there are a lot of us who experience it on more than one dimension. So make it a habit to ask yourself, how does this situation affect the person in their identity of X? And how does it affect them in their identity of Y? This way you will learn to see that often things work hand in hand against us, sadly. If you're a group organizer, there's a few additional steps you can take. One is to make sure that you have basic safety measurements in place. So have a code of conduct so people know what is unacceptable behavior and I can actually call it out and feel safe enough to do so. Do have discussion norms that will encourage people to participate in your discussions and make sure that it's safe. Please also don't make assumptions about your members. It's always a great idea to ask. This includes pronouns, the way people are living, their general situation, their background, their knowledge, their accessibility needs, everything. So it is a really great idea to make it a habit to ask for feedback regularly and give people an option to provide this feedback anonymously, because it can be really scary if you have an accessibility need and your inner ableist is really strong and tells you this will be uncomfortable for other people, this will make stuff overly complicated. I don't know, there's a lot of these thoughts going on. If you can give an anonymous ask to say, I don't know, can we please have chairs? Because standing so long is really exhausting for me. And then the group organizer can just address everyone and say, cool, we'll bring chairs for everyone who wants to. We for sure have at least one. If you need more, please ask me. Then find solutions for the barriers that people voiced in your feedback, but also be transparent about the barriers that are already in place. For example, there's 5 steps into the cafe we're meeting in, or the environment is really loud, or there's cobblestone. Whatever it is, be transparent about it. Also, it's a really great idea to support other movements fighting injustice and discrimination. And this can take on a lot of forms. You, for example, could provide with your group a vegan buffet for a video screening of, I don't know, the trans rights group in your area, or, which also is a great outreach opportunity if you're cool about it, by the way. You could also show up to demonstrations that are not about animal rights, right? I personally would have loved to see a big group of vegans carrying signs of vegans against ableism or something like that at my local disability pride. Show up. Okay, and for organizations, your main job is to lead by example. We talked about this a bit. Yeah, and you also, if you're running an organization, you could hire a diversity consultant if you're overwhelmed and don't know what to do. And why are we doing this? Because even if it takes small and maybe waddly steps, it are steps toward a more inclusive future where everyone can participate in this movement and we can make the world free from animal abuse and exploitation. Thank you very much for your attention. I know it was a lot.